Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world. Now let's get started with Robert, Qualio founder and CEO, and our show host.
Hi everyone. We are glad to have you join us today as I speak with one of our customers, Andy Levien, President and CEO of ArcScan. ArcScan was founded in February 2007 in Golden, Colorado. Their product, the ArcScan Insight 100, is a leading high-frequency ultrasound device that images the entire anterior segment of the eye, including behind the iris, areas that cannot be seen with even the newest models of existing optical technology. I really enjoyed my chat with Andy today, and we really hope you enjoy the conversation. Well, we've got a lot to chat about today, and I thought it might be useful, Andy, just to kick off with a little bit about ArcScan and what you folks do that helps, save lives.
Well, we don't save lives, we save people's eyesight. And so
save and improve lives is the broader, more appropriate
And eyesight, is such an important sense. Well, they're all important, but eyesight, there's just been a real explosion in the technology to improve LASIK procedures, cataract, treatment of glaucoma, which is about loss of sight. And so our technology is a very specialized type of ultrasound, if I can go into that now.
Please.
And it's really novel because, as you know, anyone's familiar with medical imaging, ultrasound is one of the pillars next to things like CAT scan and MRI, X-ray, et cetera. But no one else is doing ultrasound like us. So what excited me about the ArcScan opportunity when I first started 10 years ago with ArcScan is we actually have a little robot that operates underwater in our desktop device. And it moves the ultrasound beam in a very controlled and fairly rapid way. So it gives us best in breed image quality, repeatability of the measurements at a very high precision, which is necessary when doing eye surgeries because we're dealing with very small anatomy. And so it's a really cool combination of computer controlled robotics and ultrasound that helps doctors better look inside the eye for cataract procedures, for replacing the lenses there, for looking carefully at the cornea to better understand, are you a candidate for LASIK procedures? Because there's some conditions that you want to avoid before doing LASIK. So we have a best-in-class tool for screening there. And so it's a really exciting combination of technologies for ArcScan. This motion control, underwater robotics, and ultrasound. And then in the end, we call our device the Insight. So we do clinical work to apply AI in our image processing to provide, not just data, but insights to the ophthalmologist.
So how big is this device?
It's a desktop device. It's probably 2 feet, kind of a cube. It sits on a desktop. We have a very high power PC that sits under the table that we provide. We sell it for, $70,000 to $80,000, which sounds like a lot, but that's kind of what these sort of diagnostics devices cost.
Yeah, of course. That might sound pretty large, but it's smaller than lots of the pieces of equipment I've seen in those practices.
Yeah, and so our vision is to bring, we believe, the way we do ultrasound, so not a handheld, but a scanned ultrasound. We also see applications out of ophthalmology. I don't have time to work on them very much right now, but we're looking forward to doing some other things, potentially in mammography, urology, et cetera, where the quality and depth of imaging that we enable through our novel combination of technologies will provide also high value diagnostics. Because so much we hear about in medicine is about diagnostics. I mean, what gets the press is the pharmacologicals, the therapeutic implants. But as an engineer, everything first starts with making a good and precise measurement. That's where stuff starts. So
nicely stated. So, and you folks kicked off this in 2007. Was this always the use case, or did you arrive at this application over time?
It was always the use case. There was a predicate device that our original inventors had worked on. This is out of Cornell, the Weill Medical College in Manhattan. And so this was the use case, but as we
Mhm.
developed the technology, we've actually expanded it to be thinking about not only expanding the use cases in ophthalmology, because of course, like many of the ologies, there is a handful of subspecialties in ophthalmology, and we've expanded there, but we've also expanded thinking about the other ologies in medicine as well.
Yeah. So I'm curious, after 14 years later, where is the company today? Any kind of stats? I'm curious to see how, it sounds like a really important use case where you folks are.
I know when you talk about 14 years, it's like,
Yeah.
Rob, where's it gone? So we are a mid-growth stage. So we have currently about 50 devices installed. And by the end of the year, we hope that to be over 100.
Awesome.
It's not like thousands, because that's probably our end cases. We'll have several thousand of these devices deployed around the world. But despite COVID, we've actually had a pretty good year. And we're getting to a tipping point with brand and technology awareness. In ophthalmology, we're seeing our sales growth accelerate. We've just transferred to a larger manufacturer because we subcontract the manufacturing, and they'll easily be able to handle the capacity we need to grow. We're right on the door of a major investment from a strategic player in China, and China is just an absolutely huge opportunity for us. And so I've got my, Learn Chinese app on my phone now, and everyone else here. So yeah, we're kind of mid-growth stage, still startup.
Yeah, of course.
Of only 10 people. We hope to expand with the strategic investment coming in. We hope to double the size of the employees in the next 6 to 9 months. So it's a very, very exciting time for us.
Yeah, it's a good time. Well, like lots of things take time to really start compounding. So it's great you had a good year during COVID. I know that looking at our customer base, we saw some hiccups with elective type procedures or products and services around that, but we have seen a rebound in demand there. So it's really nice to see that it was more of a blip there, right, rather than like a bigger trough. So that's exciting to hear. Now, I was looking at your background before we got together today, and I've seen like an interesting kind of path, even in private equity and a range of different things here. I was hoping you could maybe walk me through the path to your current role. How did you get to doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm going to focus on keeping this short.
Yeah.
I graduated from, so I'm a Bay Area boy. I graduated from Cal Berkeley, did my graduate work in biomechanics right at the time, and this really dates me, the first 4-bit microprocessor Intel had just introduced. And so even though I really wanted to be in, medical devices, Silicon Valley beckoned. And so I went down to Silicon Valley and worked in a number of startups there for a while, but really not in medical devices, really kind of instrumentation, some of it was semiconductor processing. Then I wound up in industrial controls and wound up a few other startups here in Colorado, then with a major corporation called Emerson Electric, and kind of moved up the corporate ladder there from VP of engineering into general management, being a general manager of a large division for Emerson in Boulder, just north of Denver.
Yeah.
And then from there over to Europe, again, kind of corporate roles in instrumentation, industrial controls, always wanting to get back to medical devices. And in that corporate role, we launched a strategy to do some acquisitions around medical devices. And it kind of led me back to medical devices after many years, and eventually to ArcScan about 10 or 11 years ago here in Colorado. So a real circuitous path, but pretty exciting because I bring, as a CEO startup, I bring some pretty deep experience in business development, strategic development, good process design, leading us back to why we invested in Qualio, because I'm a very process-oriented guy, and you have to make compromises as a startup person, because sometimes you just got to run like your pants are on fire because you just got to. And process kind of takes.
Sometimes or all the time.
Yeah. Well, sometimes more than you'd like. And so I'm really enjoying getting back to being a mid-growth stage startup and focusing now on putting some good foundations in place. Because as a medical device company, you can only run that way for so long. Or pretty soon, the commitments you've got to make in your quality objectives and to your customers, you've got to get back to process.
Yeah.
And we're right in the middle of migration from anyone who knows Europe. News is, they're moving from the medical device directive to the medical device regulation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just going through wrapping up that migration and the commitment to process and good procedure, audit trail of documentation. The burden's pretty heavy for us now.
You folks are selling in like several geographies. You're in the United States, you're in Europe. Where else are you?
Yes and yes. So my background was always international.
Yeah.
So probably the country we have the least sales right now anyway is in the US, and that's changing. We were lucky to make some here in the US early inroads with some military bases because of our value proposition, not only doing applications to support soldiers who are looking to get the best eyesight they can for obvious reasons, but also more in the VA space. But we're expanding with distributors in Europe. So we also have our CE mark, obviously.
Yeah.
We've got devices in Asia, a few in China, Singapore, South Korea, and now looking to expand in Australia. We've just hired a sales guy there. Nothing in Latin America. So, with 50 devices, you can only put them so many places, but we really are an international business. We see our opportunity as an international one for sure.
I'd love to kind of circle back on that in a minute, Andy, but maybe going back to you here, because I feel like there was a question I wanted to ask that I skipped over. You mentioned wanting to get back to medical devices from the more industrial business you were in. Why? What was it about medical devices that pulled you?
Well, as a young engineer, the strength of your ideals as an individual are still front and center. And unfortunately, in my career, I kind of got pulled by opportunity, Silicon Valley, then corporate roles. But I got to tell you, as later in my career, I'm lucky that I'm having a chance to get back to those ideals, because as a CEO of a little business, I think it's incredibly important I get back to my customers. And I recently did a training at an Army medical hospital in Augusta. And before that, actually having sat through doctor consults with patients based on the insights that our device provided. There was one case, this was at Walter Reed, where we have a device. And it was a patient who was having a problem with cataracts. And it was whether we had to go and do surgery or not. And the insights from our images, and I didn't participate, but I observed that consult. Our image had a direct impact on the concerns of that patient and what was going on with her eyesight. That said, you don't need surgery. We just need to monitor and watch. Being able to know that your hard work on doing the best you can with your technology, how you support the clinical insights for the doctors. I mean, there couldn't be a richer professional experience for me. And so it's wonderful.
Amazing.
Later in my career to get back to that, because it's just it's an awesome.
How did it feel to kind of go back in and actually, start building products to directly impact that? And I wonder, how does it, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, do you get those opportunities to see the impact?
Not often enough, but it's a few times a quarter. I'll get out to see customers, because it's that seeing the relief in that customer, understanding based on our images what was going on with her eyes. I'm hoping as I build my staff and I'm wearing, instead of 20 hats, maybe only 6 or 7, I'll have more time to do that. But it's not enough for me. I wish I do it more often, but a few times a quarter now, and more hopefully going forward.
Kind of moving back then to the distribution. So thanks for sharing your story. You said you went international very early, and you spoke about, you have distributors in Europe across various parts, in Asia, South Korea, and you're like, looks to get your first salesperson in Australia. It sounds like a pretty huge undertaking in terms of achieving that as a small 10-person company. I know we speak to people who are trying to figure this out, and it takes a long time. I mean, can you talk to me about that journey? How you were able to do that?
I'm not sure. In retrospect, should we have just focused in the U.S.? Perhaps, because we started early on. It was back in 2016. We had our FDA clearance granted, as well as we had our CE mark, which of course covered a lot of Europe.
Mm.
But as we began to understand the market opportunities, we started looking in Asia, and there are some unique things about genetic predisposition of Asian eyes that make it a very fertile and large market for us. So we have focused there, and the costs are pretty extraordinary. So we're currently going through what's in China, it's called NMPA, is their version. Don't ask me
NMPA,
what that acronym stands for, is the equivalent of their FDA. We're pretty deep into that process. It's quite expensive for us. As you look as a CEO, where are the growth opportunities, and talking with my competitors, China is just an unbelievably huge opportunity for us. It's a lot. It's 4 times the size of the US.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they have genetic predisposition in terms of they have very high myopes, which speaks to laser and other refractive procedures at a very high percentage. Some other things on the glaucoma space, which is where we have a very high value proposition. So it's been a lot of work and a big investment, but it sets us up for the growth we're seeing now. And post-COVID, I've been needing to get to China, and I'm fully vaccinated now. I hope to get there as soon as political things pass, as it relates to travel. It's set, and I always question our investment in places like China, but with COVID passing, with a big investment coming from China, it's going to set us up just beautifully for pretty phenomenal growth there. So It's been a lot of hard work, a big investment, but the table is set for us now to enjoy the growth.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've done lots of the work up front. So hopefully, you get to reap that now. Any key lessons learned along that path of building out the international motion? Because it seems the path less traveled for indigenous U.S. companies to look outside the U.S. for early growth. I'm not saying it's right or wrong thing, but it's interesting to see that growing up in Ireland, I'm Irish, everything is all about exports because our local market is, 4 million people. So you have to look external immediately to grow. But a lot of companies in the US are hundreds of millions in revenue before they think about the rest of the world. How did your thinking inform to do that?
Well, in my other corporate roles, this is where I had the advantage of, these were global businesses. And it was, they were always global opportunities. And it's hard when you're in the US because, medical device technology in the US is still seen as a premium around the world. I mean, and the investment I hope to see from China it reflects the strength of the regulatory environment. We all curse it here. But, when you look at the migration of technologies out of the US, medical devices is still very strong in this country. But you've just got to you've got to look at the global opportunity. The US is maybe 30% of the world, and where you look where money is being spent to build out the healthcare systems, we're relatively mature here. Europe as well. You've got to look at where the growth opportunities are from an economic standpoint. And US is important to develop the technology here, but the growth opportunities are in Latin America, Brazil, which we're now going down the path of a regulatory approval in Brazil. Very arduous, very expensive, but that's where the growth is, right? Because that, whether it's India, which has got its unique challenges, or China, which is right on our doorstep, you've got to look to those as a CEO if you want to maximize your investors' capital investments in your company.
Any other lessons learned, if you could speak to yourself, to Andy 14 years ago and give him 1 or 2, 3 pieces of advice, what would it be?
You've got to be persistent, never give up. After all these years, I still have to remind myself, I could go, really? I mean, the work we're doing in Europe right now has really been a major resource pull on us. And you just have to be patient. Fundraising particularly, again, the focus is on the therapeutics. But the opportunity is there for better measurements. It's like the physicist. They measure something first, like, oh my God, what is that? And then they figure it out. Well, medicine's kind of the same way. Diagnostics are a critical part, whether they're biogenetics, genetic diagnostics, or measurements like ours. I still think they have a huge part to play. And there are other places in the world who get it, even though it's kind of hard here in the US for fundraising. Stay the path. This linkage of therapeutics and diagnostics, I think, is just going to get stronger the more we come up with tailored medicine, right? That's what it's all about. It used to be for a cataract procedure, you put one kind of lens in to replace your cataract. Well, now there's a plethora of lenses, and what works best for you will be all about the diagnostics and the shape of your eye and what kind of correction that you need. Yeah, just be patient, hang in there.
Thank you, Andy, for sharing, and really enjoyed having you on the show, and even more to be able to support you as a customer of Qualio. I'm looking forward to keeping in touch, and anything we can do to help out, just let us know. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.